Chapter 1. The Legend Unveiled. The village of Eldenwood lay nestled between ancient trees and steep, mist-covered mountains, its quaint cottages adorned with thatched roofs and wooden beams. As twilight descended, casting a warm glow over the cobblestone paths, the townsfolk began to gather in the square, drawn by the promise of stories and the comforting crackle of a bonfire. Autumn leaves danced in the wind, swirling like whispers of the past, as excitement filled the air. At the heart of the village stood a towering oak, its gnarled branches reaching out like the arms of a guardian. Beneath its shade, the villagers arranged benches made of rough-hewn wood, eager to hear the tales that would echo through generations. Tonight, the villagers were particularly eager, for the elder of Eldenwood, Eldrin, was to recount the legend of Thalgaroth, an ancient monster that had haunted their history. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the square, Eldrin made his way to the center. Clad in a cloak of deep green, woven from the fibers of the forest itself, his long white beard glimmered in the flickering firelight. The villagers hushed, their eyes fixed on him, a mixture of reverence and trepidation filling the air. "Gather close, my friends," Eldrin began, his voice rich and resonant, echoing through the hushed crowd. "For tonight, we delve into the tale of Thalgaroth, a creature born of darkness and the brave souls who once faced it." As the flames danced, illuminating his weathered face, he recounted the story of a time long forgotten. Many centuries ago, before our village was founded, Thalgaroth roamed the earth. It was a being of immense power, a creature forged from shadows and fear, capable of sowing chaos in even the bravest of hearts. Legends tell that it fed on the terror it inspired, growing stronger with every frightened soul. The villagers listened intently, their imaginations painting vivid images of the monster's grotesque form, its eyes glowing like embers, its claws sharp as daggers, and a roar that could shake the very earth. Some shivered, recalling stories whispered from childhood, tales passed down from parents to children, warning of the creature that once threatened their ancestors. Eldrin continued, his voice growing heavier with the weight of history. Thalgaroth was not always a monster. Once, it was revered by an ancient civilization that believed it to be a god. They built temples in its honor, offering sacrifices to appease it. But as time went on, the creature's hunger grew insatiable. It demanded more and more, until fear replaced reverence, and its followers became its prey. A murmur of unease rippled through the crowd, eyes darting nervously towards the dense woods that surrounded the village. Eldrin, sensing their apprehension, pressed on. It was the bravest warriors of our ancestors who banded together to confront this terror. United by courage, they sought the wisdom of the ancient texts, studying forgotten rituals and spells designed to bind Thalgaroth. After a fierce battle, they managed to seal the monster beneath the earth, hidden away from the world, but the fear of its return lingered like a dark cloud. As he spoke, a gust of wind swept through the square, extinguishing the bonfire momentarily. Gasps filled the air, and the villagers exchanged worried glances. Eldrin raised a hand, his voice steady despite the eerie interruption. "Fear not, my friends. It is said that as long as we remember the tale of Thalgaroth, its power remains weakened. But we must remain vigilant, for the strength of fear lies in the shadows, waiting for a chance to awaken." The tension in the air was palpable as the villagers contemplated his words. It was not just a story, it was a warning. An elderly woman, her face lined with the creases of time, spoke up. "Eldrin, what if the seal has weakened? What if Thalgaroth stirs in its slumber?" "Indeed," Eldrin replied, his gaze shifting to the darkening forest. "There have been signs, unexplained disappearances, cattle found mutilated," whispers carried by the wind. "The ancient texts foretell that if fear grows in our hearts, the seal may falter. We must remain united against the darkness, for together we are strong." As the evening wore on, Eldrin's tale deepened the villagers' sense of dread, but it also ignited a flicker of bravery within them. Mira, a spirited girl of 16, listened with rapt attention. Unlike many of her peers, who dismissed the legends as mere stories to frighten children, she felt a connection to the ancient narrative. Her heart raced at the thought of adventure, of facing the unknown. When Eldrin concluded his tale, the villagers erupted in soft applause, but the atmosphere remained heavy with anxiety. Mira exchanged glances with Kieran, a skeptical yet inquisitive boy who often questioned the old ways. "Do you think it's just a story?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kieran shrugged, glancing towards the encroaching darkness. "It could be, but something feels off tonight. It's almost as if the forest is alive." Mira's curiosity piqued. "I want to see the ruins where they sealed Thalgarath. There must be more to learn. What if the legends are true?" Kieran frowned, but could see the determination in her eyes. "I suppose we should check it out, just to be sure. If anything is amiss, we need to know." As they made their way home, Mira's mind raced with thoughts of Thalgarath. Could the ancient monster truly awaken? What would it mean for their village? The woods whispered around them, the wind carrying hints of something sinister lurking just beyond the trees. As they approached the edge of the village, Mira noticed an unusual glow emanating from the direction of the ancient stone circle. "Do you see that?" she exclaimed, pointing towards the source of the light. Kieran squinted, his brow furrowing in concern. "It wasn't there before. Let's check it out." With a mix of trepidation and excitement, they made their way towards the glowing stones, unaware that they were about to unearth a mystery that would change their lives forever. Chapter 2: Signs of the Past. The morning after the bonfire, a thick mist blanketed the village of Eldenwood, swirling around the cottages and wrapping the trees in a ghostly embrace. Mira awoke with the remnants of Eldrin's tale echoing in her mind. The legend of Thalgarath lingered like an uninvited shadow, fueling her curiosity and concern. She felt a pull towards the ancient stone circle, a yearning to uncover the truth behind the stories that haunted her dreams. As the sun struggled to break through the mist, Mira dressed quickly, her heart racing with anticipation. She glanced outside her window, where the world appeared muted, painted in shades of gray. The village was still asleep, and an eerie silence hung in the air, amplifying her sense of adventure. After a quick breakfast, she grabbed a worn leather satchel, stuffing it with a few essentials: a small lantern, a water skin, and the old map of the village passed down through generations. Mira headed towards the forest, the towering trees looming overhead like silent sentinels. The path was overgrown, with roots snaking across the ground, but she moved with determination, her mind set on exploring the secrets that lay within the ancient ruins. Kieran had agreed to join her, though she sensed his reluctance. He was more inclined to rationality than adventure, but perhaps today he would embrace the unknown. When she reached the edge of the forest, she paused to take a deep breath, the fresh scent of pine filling her lungs. Just ahead, she spotted Kieran leaning against a tree, his arms crossed over his chest, a skeptical look on his face. "You really think we'll find anything worthwhile?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Of course. Eldrin said the seals were powerful, but what if they've weakened? We have to check it out!" Mira replied, her excitement contagious. Kieran sighed but pushed himself off the tree. "Fine, but if we find nothing but a bunch of old stones, I'm holding you accountable." With a laugh, Mira led the way deeper into the forest, the soft crunch of leaves beneath their feet providing a rhythmic backdrop to their journey. They walked in comfortable silence, the only sounds the rustling of leaves and distant bird calls. Mira felt an odd sense of connection to the land. Each step seemed to draw her closer to the heart of Eldenwood's history. As they approached the stone circle, a sense of awe washed over them. The ancient stones rose from the earth, moss-covered and weathered, standing as silent witnesses to the passage of time. The air felt different here, thick with a tension that sent shivers down Mira's spine. "It's even more magnificent than I imagined," she breathed, taking in the grandeur of the sight. Kieran examined the stones closely, running his fingers over the intricate carvings that adorned them. "These markings, they look like runes. I've seen something similar in the texts at the library," he muttered, his skepticism giving way to curiosity. Mira knelt beside one of the larger stones, brushing away the moss to reveal clearer inscriptions. "What do they say?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, as if afraid to disturb the spirits of the past. "I can't make out all of them," Kieran replied, squinting at the symbols. "But they mention binding and sealing. It's likely these were part of the ritual used to contain Thalgarath." Mira felt a rush of exhilaration. So, If we can understand these runes, we might learn how to keep Thalgaroth from awakening again. As they continued to explore, Kieran's brow furrowed in concentration. These markings also reference fear. It seems the monster was tied to the emotions of those who lived here. The stronger the fear, the weaker the seal. The weight of his words hung in the air, and Mira's excitement began to mix with apprehension. "Do you think fear is growing among the villagers?" she asked, glancing back toward the village, now a distant silhouette through the trees. Kieran shrugged. "It's possible. Eldrin mentioned signs of unease. If the villagers succumbed to fear, Thalgaroth could regain strength." Mira stood, feeling a new resolve fill her. "We need to warn them. We can't let fear take hold." Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the forest, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. Mira and Kieran exchanged worried glances, their hearts racing. "What was that?" Mira exclaimed, gripping Kieran's arm. "Let's check it out," Kieran suggested, his skepticism forgotten as adrenaline surged through them. They moved cautiously toward the source of the noise, the atmosphere thick with tension. As they ventured deeper into the woods, they stumbled upon a fallen tree. Its massive trunk sprawled across the path. The roots were ripped from the earth, and the surrounding area was disturbed, as if a great force had uprooted it. What could have done this? Mira wondered aloud, surveying the damage. Kieran knelt beside the uprooted tree, inspecting the ground. "Look at this," he pointed, his finger tracing unusual patterns in the soil. "These markings, they're similar to the runes on the stones." Mira felt a chill run down her spine. It's as if whatever is bound beneath the stones is trying to break free. Just then, a low growl reverberated through the trees, sending shivers down their spines. They froze, hearts pounding in their chests. The sound was primal, echoing through the stillness of the forest. Kieran's eyes widened and he whispered, "We should go back, now." Mira hesitated, torn between the desire to uncover the truth and the instinct to flee. "But what if it's Thalgaroth? We can't leave without knowing for sure." Before Kieran could respond, the growl grew louder, accompanied by a rustling in the underbrush. Panic surged through them, and they turned to run, their feet pounding against the forest floor. The sound of snapping branches followed closely behind, an ominous reminder that they were not alone. As they raced back toward the village, Mira glanced over her shoulder, fear clawing at her heart. The forest felt alive, as if the shadows themselves were reaching for them. "We need to warn everyone," she gasped, breathless. Kieran nodded, determination igniting within him. "We'll tell Eldrin. He'll know what to do." With every step, they pushed the limits of their endurance, the village lights beckoning them like a beacon of hope. They burst into Eldenwood, hearts pounding and voices raised in urgency. The familiar streets were now a blur, shadows stretching ominously around them. As they reached the square, Mira called out for Eldrin, her voice trembling with fear. The villagers turned, startled by the sudden commotion. Eldrin appeared from the crowd, concern etched on his face. "What's happened?" he demanded, stepping forward. Mira and Kieran exchanged glances, their words tumbling out in a rush as they recounted their findings. The elder listened intently, his expression shifting from concern to alarm as they described the fallen tree and the growl echoing through the forest. "Fear is a powerful thing," Eldrin said gravely. "We must remain vigilant. Gather the villagers. We need to fortify our defenses and strengthen the seal around Thalgaroth's prison before it's too late." As the villagers gathered, uncertainty and anxiety spread among them, but Mira felt a newfound sense of purpose. Together, they would confront the darkness that threatened their home. Chapter 3: The Awakening. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the village of Eldenwood as preparations began for the annual harvest festival. Banners fluttered in the gentle breeze, and laughter filled the air as villagers adorned the square with vibrant decorations. Yet, amidst the festive atmosphere, an undercurrent of anxiety lingered. The ominous tales of Thalgaroth echoed in the minds of many, shadowing their celebrations with fear. Mira stood near the entrance of the square, her heart heavy with the weight of what she and Kieran had discovered in the forest. She watched as her fellow villagers danced and sang, their spirits seemingly unbroken. Despite their outward joy, she could sense an air of unease beneath the surface. The festival, once a celebration of bounty, now felt like a fragile facade against the impending darkness. Kieran joined her, his expression grave. "Do you think it's wise to celebrate right now?" he asked, scanning the bustling crowd. "What if Thalgaroth really is awakening?" Mira sighed, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her dress. "I don't know, but we can't let fear control us. We have to believe that we can keep it at bay." Her resolve was unwavering, but deep down she couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was about to happen. As twilight descended, the villagers gathered around the bonfire at the heart of the square, eager to share stories and enjoy the warmth of the flames. Eldrin stood at the front, his voice carrying above the crackling fire as he welcomed everyone to the festival. "Tonight, we celebrate our harvest and our unity. Together, we are strong." His words, meant to inspire, resonated with the crowd, and cheers erupted from the villagers. But as the night wore on, the atmosphere shifted. The laughter turned nervous, the dancing more erratic. Shadows flickered ominously in the firelight, and Mira couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She exchanged worried glances with Kieran, who mirrored her unease. "Something feels wrong," he whispered, his eyes darting to the edge of the forest. Just then, a sharp crack echoed through the square, and the ground trembled beneath them. The festivities faltered as villagers froze, confusion and fear washing over their faces. Eldrin stepped forward, his expression shifting from joy to alarm. "What was that?" he demanded, a palpable tension thickening the air. Before anyone could respond, the sky darkened, and a chill swept through the square. The bonfire flickered violently, casting strange shadows on the ground. Mira's heart raced as she sensed the energy in the air shifting, a feeling of dread coiling around her. Suddenly, a deafening roar erupted from the forest, echoing through the village like thunder. It was a sound that resonated with primal fear, a growl that sent chills down their spines. Panic spread through the crowd like wildfire, and chaos erupted as villagers screamed and ran in all directions. "Thalgarath!" Mira shouted, her voice lost in the chaos. She grasped Kieran's arm tightly, trying to maintain her footing as the crowd surged around them. "We need to get to safety." Eldrin's voice boomed above the din, commanding attention. "Everyone, to the inn, we must regroup and fortify our defenses." His authority cut through the fear, guiding the villagers toward the inn at the far end of the square. Mira and Kieran fought their way through the panicked crowd, their hearts pounding as they finally reached the inn's sturdy doors. The villagers poured inside, breathless and terrified. Eldrin stood at the entrance, rallying everyone. "Listen, we must remain calm. Thalgaroth has awakened, but together we can withstand its power. We need to strengthen the seal at the stone circle before it can unleash its full fury." Mira's heart raced. "But how can we do that if it's already out there?" she exclaimed, desperation creeping into her voice. "We must confront it," Kieran replied, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "If we can gather the bravest among us and return to the stone circle, we may have a chance to bind it again." The room fell silent, the weight of their situation hanging heavy in the air. Eldrin nodded, his gaze piercing. "Gather those willing to fight. We must act quickly." Mira felt a surge of determination. "I'm in," she said, her voice unwavering. "I won't let it harm our village." Kieran met her gaze, a flicker of admiration in his eyes. "You're brave, Mira, but we need a plan." As the villagers began to organize, Mira felt a sense of purpose wash over her. They gathered supplies, weapons, and torches, their fear transforming into a fierce resolve. Eldrin led them in a quick discussion, outlining their strategy. "We'll move as a group toward the stone circle. We must keep our courage strong, for Thalgarath feeds on our fear." With torches lit, the villagers stepped outside, the flickering flames illuminating their determined faces. The night was eerily quiet now, the only sound the rustling of leaves and the occasional snap of twigs underfoot. Mira felt the weight of the darkness pressing in around them, but she kept her chin high, her heart steady. As they approached the stone circle, the atmosphere shifted again, a palpable energy filling the air. The stones loomed ahead, their ancient surfaces glowing faintly in the torchlight. Mira could feel her pulse quickening, a mix of fear and excitement coursing through her veins. This was the moment they had been preparing for. Eldrin stepped forward, raising his voice to rally the villagers. "We stand on the edge of darkness, but together we are strong. Focus your minds on the bond we share and let that courage guide us." With every word, Mira felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. They formed a circle around the stones, the villagers holding hands tightly, their expressions fierce with determination. Mira closed her eyes, drawing strength from her friends, channeling all her fear into a powerful resolve. Now, Eldrin commanded, we must chant the binding words. Remember, the strength of our hearts will fuel the seal. As the villagers began to chant in unison, the ground trembled beneath them, and the wind howled through the trees. A low growl rumbled in the distance, echoing their fears. Mira's heart raced as the shadows began to swirl around them, the darkness pressing in like a suffocating fog. Stay strong, Kieran shouted, his voice cutting through the noise. We can't let it win. Mira opened her eyes, locking gazes with Kieran, and felt an unbreakable connection to him and their fellow villagers. They were fighting not just for their home, but for each other. As the chant grew louder, the energy around them pulsed, a shimmering barrier forming between the villagers and the encroaching darkness. The growl intensified, reverberating through the air like a death knell. Shadows danced around them, twisting and contorting, as Thalgarath's presence drew nearer. Mira felt a rush of fear threatening to overwhelm her, but she pushed it down, focusing on the warmth of her friend's hands in hers. Courage! Eldrin shouted, his voice rising above the chaos. Courage is our shield. With every repetition of the chant, the barrier grew stronger, pushing back against the darkness. Mira could feel the power of their unity resonating within her, filling her with an unwavering determination. They were not alone. Together, they could face the darkness. But just as they seemed to gain ground, a fierce wind tore through the stone circle, extinguishing their torches and plunging them into darkness. Panic surged among the villagers, their voices rising in fear as shadows enveloped them. Mira's heart raced, but she held on tighter to Kieran's hand. We can't give up, she yelled, her voice breaking through the chaos. We have to keep going. Focus on the bond we share, Eldrin cried, struggling against the wind. Keep chanting. Mira closed her eyes again, pushing back against the fear. They had come too far to fail now. With all her strength, she shouted the words of the chant, her voice echoing into the night. The villagers followed suit, their voices rising like a beacon in the darkness. As they chanted, the shadows began to recede, the energy of their unity pushing back against Thalgarath's growing power. But the monster was relentless, and the ground shook violently beneath them. The air grew thick with tension as the growl transformed into a roar, a sound that chilled them to the bone. Mira felt the fear creeping back in, but she wouldn't let it consume her. We can do this, she urged, her voice ringing with conviction. We are stronger together. In that moment, she caught sight of Eldrin, his face illuminated by the faint glow of the stone circle. His determination fueled her resolve, and she pushed herself to the forefront, her voice rising above the others. Thalgarath, you will not take our home. We are united. With a final surge of strength, the villagers chanted as one, their voices intertwining in a powerful harmony. The darkness recoiled, the wind stilled, and the growl faded into silence. The shimmering barrier around them pulsed brightly, illuminating the stone circle and casting away the shadows. As the light enveloped them, Mira felt a wave of relief wash over her. They had pushed back Thalgarath, at least for now. But deep down, she knew that this was only the beginning of a battle that would test their courage, unity, and resolve in ways they had yet to imagine. Chapter 4: The Gathering Storm. The dawn after the harrowing encounter at the stone circle broke with an eerie stillness. Eldenwood, once vibrant with the sounds of laughter and celebration, now lay draped in an unsettling silence. Mira awoke early, her mind racing with the events of the previous night. The memory of the villagers standing united against the shadows played over and over in her head, the chants rising like a barrier against the darkness. But the victory felt fragile, as if a veil had been drawn over their world, obscuring the dangers that still lurked in the depths of the forest. She stepped outside, squinting against the harsh light of the sun as it spilled over the rooftops. The air was thick with tension, and an uneasy feeling gnawed at her stomach. Gathering her resolve, she made her way to the inn where the villagers had gathered the night before. As she entered, the familiar scent of wood smoke and baked bread enveloped her, but there was no warmth in the atmosphere. The villagers sat in small clusters, whispering anxiously, their faces drawn and pale. Eldrin stood at the head of the room, his expression grave as he surveyed the crowd. We have faced the first wave of Thalgarath's awakening, but we cannot let our guard down. The monster is powerful, and it feeds on fear. We must rally together and prepare for the battles to come. Mira felt a surge of determination. "What can we do?" she asked, her voice breaking the heavy silence. "We can't just wait for it to attack again. We need to strengthen the seals and gather knowledge about Thalgarath. We need to understand what we're up against." Eldrin nodded, appreciation flickering in his eyes. "You are right, Mira. Knowledge is our greatest weapon. We must gather our resources, consult the old texts, and learn everything we can about the creature. The legends tell of its weaknesses, but we need to piece together the truth from the fragments of history." Kieran stepped forward, his brow furrowed in thought. "I've seen some old manuscripts in the library that detail the history of Eldenwood. They might contain valuable information about the creature and how it was bound in the first place." "Then we must go to the library," Eldrin declared, rallying the villagers. "We'll split into groups. While some of us work on reinforcing the seals at the stone circle, others will scour the library for any texts that can guide us. Time is of the essence." The villagers nodded, a sense of purpose igniting within them. Mira felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders, but she pushed aside her fear. They were fighting for their home, for their loved ones. "I'll help at the library," she said, glancing at Kieran, who nodded in agreement. As they made their way through the village, Mira noticed the changes in the atmosphere. The lively chatter that usually filled Eldenwood was replaced by hushed voices and wary glances. Children clung to their parents, fear reflected in their innocent eyes. She realized that the grip of Thalgarath's awakening had seeped into every corner of their lives, suffocating the light that once illuminated their days. At the library, the air was thick with dust and the scent of old parchment. Kieran led Mira to the back of the room, where the oldest texts were kept. As they rummaged through the shelves, they unearthed tomes filled with ancient script and illustrations depicting Thalgarath. Mira's heart raced as she leafed through the pages, each illustration more terrifying than the last. "Look at this!" Kieran exclaimed, pointing to a page that depicted the creature in all its grotesque glory. The text mentions its ability to manipulate shadows and instill fear in those around it. It thrives on chaos, and that's how it breaks the seals. Mira felt a chill run down her spine as she examined the drawing. The creature was monstrous, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light, and its body was a mass of dark tendrils. "We need to find a way to counter that fear," she murmured, her mind racing. "If we can strengthen our own resolve, we might be able to weaken its hold on us." Kieran nodded, his eyes scanning the pages for further information. "Here," he said, flipping to another page. "It mentions a ritual that can be performed to reinforce the seals. We'll need specific herbs and items to complete it." As they gathered the details, the hours slipped away, and the weight of their task grew heavier. The air in the library was thick with tension, but Mira felt a flicker of hope. They had a plan, and they had each other. Together, they would confront the darkness. After collecting what they needed, Mira and Kieran hurried back to the village square, where the other villagers had already begun reinforcing the stone circle. Eldrin coordinated their efforts, directing people to gather stones and brush to strengthen the perimeter. The atmosphere was electric, a mix of determination and fear as everyone worked together in the fading light of day. "Mira, Kieran," Eldrin called out as they approached. "Did you find anything useful?" "We did," Kieran replied, holding up the aged manuscript. "It details a ritual to reinforce the seals, but we'll need specific herbs and items to perform it." Eldrin's eyes lit up with hope. "Then we must gather what we need quickly. The longer we wait, the stronger Thalgarath becomes." Mira felt a surge of adrenaline as they began organizing their efforts. Villagers were dispatched to search for the necessary herbs: valerian for calmness, sage for protection, and yarrow for courage. As they prepared, Mira couldn't help but notice the flickering shadows creeping toward them from the edges of the forest, as if Thalgarath was watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. As dusk settled over Eldenwood, The villagers gathered once more at the stone circle, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of torches. The energy in the air crackled with tension as they prepared for the ritual. Eldrin stood at the center, flanked by Mira and Kieran, the ancient manuscript open before him. "Tonight, we will reinforce the seals that bind Thalgaroth," Eldrin declared, his voice steady and commanding. "We stand together, united against the darkness. Remember the strength we hold within ourselves, for that is our greatest weapon." Mira's heart raced as she looked around at the determined faces of her friends and neighbors. She felt an overwhelming sense of pride for her village, for the strength they had shown in the face of adversity. The fear still lingered, but it was now tempered by a fierce resolve. "Let us begin," Eldrin said, gesturing for them to form a circle around the ancient stones. As they gathered close, Mira felt a comforting warmth radiate from those around her. Together, they began to chant the words from the manuscript, the cadence of their voices echoing through the night. As the ritual unfolded, the air thickened with energy, shimmering with a golden light that pulsed in time with their chants. Mira focused on the bond they shared, drawing strength from her neighbors, her friends, and Kieran standing by her side. Together, they wove a tapestry of light, pushing back against the darkness that threatened to envelop them. But as the final words of the chant fell from their lips, a sudden gust of wind swept through the stone circle, snuffing out their torches and plunging them into darkness. The temperature plummeted, and a low growl reverberated through the air, sending chills down Mira's spine. Panic flared in the villagers as the shadows seemed to come alive, twisting and turning like serpents. "Stay together!" Eldrin shouted, but the fear was palpable, creeping into their hearts and threatening to unravel the bonds they had forged. Mira squeezed Kieran's hand tightly, her voice steady despite the rising tide of fear. "We can't let it win. Remember the chant. Focus on the light." As the shadows writhed around them, Mira felt a flicker of defiance ignite within her. They were not helpless. They were united, and together they could push back against the encroaching darkness. The chanting resumed, louder and more determined, each villager pouring their will into the words. With every repetition of the chant, the light within the circle flickered and grew, pushing back the shadows, illuminating their faces with warmth and resolve. The growl subsided, replaced by a haunting silence as Thalgaroth's presence faltered before their unity. But Mira knew this was only a temporary reprieve. They had reinforced the seals, but the threat still loomed, and they needed to remain vigilant. As the last echoes of their chant faded into the night, she looked around at her fellow villagers, their faces illuminated by the glowing stones. They were weary but resolute, and together they would face whatever darkness lay ahead. In that moment, Mira understood that the battle against Thalgaroth was not just a fight against a monster. It was a test of their strength, their unity, and their courage. And as long as they stood together, they had a fighting chance. Chapter 5. The Shadow's Embrace. The sun barely broke through the dense clouds that lingered over Eldenwood, casting a gray pall over the village. The air felt heavy, laden with an anticipation that hung like a thick fog. Mira stood at the edge of the forest, her heart racing as she gazed into the shadows where the trees twisted and turned, like the fingers of a dark hand reaching for the sky. After reinforcing the seals, she had hoped for a moment of respite, but the darkness was still there, lurking just beyond their sight. Kieran joined her, his brow furrowed in thought. "Do you think it worked?" he asked, peering into the forest. "I can't shake the feeling that Thalgaroth is still out there, waiting for the right moment to strike." Mira nodded, her stomach knotting at the thought. "We've only postponed the inevitable." "I can feel it too. The fear is still there, and the shadows seem to whisper secrets. It's almost as if the forest is alive, aware of what's coming." The two of them had been assigned to scout the perimeter of the village, ensuring that no dark tendrils of Thalgaroth had breached the reinforced seals. As they ventured deeper into the forest, the sounds of the village faded, replaced by the rustle of leaves and the occasional caw of a distant crow. The vibrant greens of the forest felt muted today, shadows stretching unnaturally long, and the air chilled as if the sun had forgotten to warm this part of the world. "Stay close," Kieran warned, his voice low. "We don't know what we might encounter out here." Mira nodded, gripping the hilt of her dagger tightly. The weapon felt heavy in her hand, a reminder of the looming threat they faced. As they moved cautiously through the underbrush, the atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive. Every snap of a twig echoed like thunder in her ears, and she could almost feel the gaze of unseen eyes watching their every move. After what felt like an eternity of navigating the labyrinth of trees, they reached a clearing where the remnants of an ancient shrine stood crumbling and overgrown. The stones were weathered, covered in moss and vines, but Mira felt an inexplicable pull toward the site. There was a strange energy here, a connection to something deeper. "What is this place?" Kieran asked, stepping into the clearing beside her. "I've never seen it before." Mira brushed her fingers over the rough stone, tracing the faded symbols carved into its surface. "It looks like it was once a place of worship, perhaps dedicated to the ancient spirits of the forest. But now," she paused, feeling a chill run down her spine. "It's been forgotten, just like the legends of Thalgarath." Kieran frowned, glancing around the clearing. "Maybe we should look for clues about the monster's origins. If this shrine is connected to it somehow, there might be something we can use." As they began to explore, Mira's instincts screamed at her to leave, but her curiosity compelled her to dig deeper. The shadows seemed to stretch and swirl around them, almost as if they were alive, and the air grew thick with tension. With each step she took, the whispering in the wind intensified, forming an indecipherable chorus that sent shivers down her spine. Suddenly, a rustling in the underbrush broke the silence, and Mira and Kieran froze, hearts pounding in their chests. From the shadows emerged a figure cloaked in darkness, a tall silhouette that seemed to absorb the light around it. Mira's breath caught in her throat as she instinctively took a step back, her dagger poised for defense. "Who dares disturb my domain?" the figure hissed, its voice like gravel. The shadows around it pulsed and writhed, as if they had a life of their own, responding to the figure's every word. Kieran stepped in front of Mira, his eyes narrowed. "We're not here to cause trouble. We seek knowledge about Thalgarath." The figure tilted its head, revealing piercing eyes that glowed like embers. "Thalgarath is not a being to be trifled with. You seek answers, yet you have already placed yourselves in danger." It stepped forward, and the shadows coiled around its feet, moving with an unnatural grace. Mira's heart raced as she felt the weight of fear pressing down on her. "What do you know about Thalgarath?" she demanded, refusing to back down despite the tremor in her voice. "We must understand how to stop it." The figure regarded her with a mix of curiosity and disdain. "You know nothing of the darkness you face. Thalgarath is ancient, born from the very fear that resides in the hearts of mortals. It is a creature of chaos, thriving on your despair and anguish. To defeat it, you must confront the shadows within yourselves." Kieran stepped forward, eyes blazing with determination. "We're not afraid. We've already faced it once, and we'll do it again. We just need to know how to reinforce the seals and prevent its full awakening." The figure chuckled darkly, and the shadows around it twisted in a mesmerizing dance. "You cannot simply seal away a creature born from your own fears. The shadows are part of you. Embrace them, understand them, and you may find the strength to fight back. But know this, Thalgarath is patient. It waits for the moment you let your guard down." Mira felt a chill wash over her as the figure's words sank in. "What do you mean? Are you saying we have to give in to fear?" "Fear is not the enemy," the figure replied, its voice resonating through the clearing. "It is a part of existence. Only by confronting your deepest fears can you find true courage. You must understand the bond between light and shadow. One cannot exist without the other." With a wave of its hand, the figure gestured toward the shrine. The shadows rippled, revealing glimpses of ancient rituals and the vibrant history of Eldenwood. Mira and Kieran watched, entranced, as images of villagers standing united against Thalgarath flickered before them, echoing the very fight they had waged. "Remember these moments," the figure urged, its voice softening. "Draw strength from your unity, your hope, and your love for one another. These are the threads that bind you together. You will face Thalgarath again, but this time you must be prepared to confront not just the monster, but the shadows that dwell within yourselves." Mira felt a surge of emotion at the figure's words, a mix of hope and fear battling within her. How do we prepare? What must we do? She asked, her voice steadier now, fueled by determination. Seek out the ancient spirits of the forest, the figure replied, its form beginning to dissolve into the shadows. They can guide you in understanding the balance of light and darkness, but heed my warning, the journey will not be easy. You must be willing to face your fears head on. Only then can you hope to confront Thalgaroth. As the figure faded into the shadows, Mira felt a strange mix of loss and resolve. She turned to Kieran, who looked equally shaken. What do you think that was? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know, Mira replied, her heart racing. But it was right about one thing. We need to confront our fears if we're going to have any hope of defeating Thalgaroth. It's not just about sealing it away. It's about understanding the darkness within us. Kieran nodded, determination returning to his eyes. Then we'll find those ancient spirits. They might have the answers we need. As they made their way back to the village, Mira felt a flicker of hope igniting within her. They had faced darkness, and while the road ahead was fraught with challenges, they had also gained valuable insight. They were not alone in this fight. Their bond with each other and their village was a source of strength that would guide them. But as they neared Eldenwood, the sky darkened ominously, clouds swirling like a storm gathering on the horizon. Mira felt a shiver run down her spine as the shadows seemed to whisper her name, echoing the warning from the mysterious figure. Thalgaroth was not done with them yet. The battle was far from over. Chapter 6: Whispers of the Forest. The atmosphere in Eldenwood shifted dramatically in the days following Mira and Kieran's encounter with the mysterious figure in the shrine. The villagers moved about with an air of trepidation, casting glances toward the darkened forest as if expecting Thalgaroth to emerge from the shadows at any moment. The oppressive weight of fear hung thick in the air, and Mira felt it wrap around her like a shroud. Yet, beneath that fear lay an ember of resolve, fueled by their newfound understanding that they needed to confront the darkness both within and without. As night fell, Mira stood at the edge of the village, her gaze fixed on the tree line where the shadows deepened into impenetrable blackness. Kieran joined her, a determined look in his eyes. We need to find the ancient spirits the cloaked figure mentioned. They might hold the key to our survival. Mira nodded, her heart racing at the thought of venturing into the forest once more. But how do we even begin to look for them? The figure didn't give us any specifics. Kieran ran a hand through his hair, deep in thought. We'll have to rely on the legends. The villagers spoke of a sacred grove deep within the forest, a place where the spirits gather. If we can find it, we may be able to commune with them. Mira took a deep breath, steeling herself against the rising tide of fear. Then we'll need to leave at first light. The next morning, the sun barely broke through the blanket of clouds as they set out. Armed with their weapons, a few supplies, and the determination to protect their home, Mira and Kieran ventured into the forest, stepping into the cool shadows. The familiar rustle of leaves and distant calls of wildlife felt different now, tinged with an unsettling energy. Each step deeper into the forest felt like crossing a threshold into a world steeped in ancient secrets. As they walked, Mira tried to remember the stories she had heard as a child about the sacred grove. They say the grove is alive with magic, she recalled, her voice barely above a whisper, that it can show you your deepest fears and desires. Let's hope we don't get lost in our own minds, Kieran replied, a hint of humor in his voice, though the tension in his shoulders betrayed his own unease. Hours passed as they wound their way through the forest, the path growing more overgrown and twisted. The shadows seemed to thicken with every step, whispering secrets in a language Mira couldn't understand. The sun remained hidden, casting the forest in a twilight haze that made her feel as if they were walking through a dream. Suddenly, they heard a soft rustling nearby, and Mira froze, instinctively gripping her dagger. "Did you hear that?" she asked, scanning the trees around them. Kieran nodded, his expression serious. It could be an animal, or something else. As they stood in silence, a figure emerged from the underbrush, cloaked in green and brown, blending seamlessly with the forest. Mira's heart raced as she prepared to defend herself, but the figure raised a hand, revealing a kind face framed by long, braided hair adorned with leaves and flowers. Fear not, travelers, the figure said, their voice melodic and calming. I am Elowin, a guardian of the forest. I felt your presence and the weight of your purpose. You seek the sacred grove. Mira and Kieran exchanged glances, surprised yet relieved. Yes, Kieran replied cautiously. We're looking for the ancient spirits that dwell within it. We need their guidance to confront Thalgaroth. Elowin smiled knowingly, her eyes sparkling like sunlight filtering through leaves. The spirits are wise and powerful, but they will not reveal themselves easily. You must prove your worthiness to them. Follow me, and I will lead you to the grove. Without hesitation, Elowin turned and glided deeper into the forest, moving with an otherworldly grace. Mira and Kieran followed closely, the shadows seeming to part before them as if recognizing the guardian. The air grew thick with an earthy fragrance, and the sounds of the forest shifted, transforming into a symphony of life. As they walked, Elowin shared tales of the ancient spirits, how they protected the balance of nature, how they were born from the very essence of the earth, and how they thrived in the sacred grove. But heed my warning, she cautioned, her tone turning serious. The grove tests those who seek its wisdom. You must confront your fears, for only by embracing them can you hope to move forward. Mira felt a knot form in her stomach. The whispers of the forest grew louder, weaving tales of her insecurities, of the fear that gnawed at her resolve. She had always felt responsible for her village, for her friends, and the thought of failing them sent a shiver down her spine. As they continued, they reached a clearing bathed in dappled sunlight. Towering trees surrounded them, their branches intertwined like ancient guardians, forming a natural archway leading into the sacred grove. The air shimmered with energy, a palpable sense of magic hanging in the atmosphere. Here we are, Elowin announced, gesturing toward the grove. Enter with an open heart and mind. Embrace what you fear, and only then will the spirits reveal themselves. Mira and Kieran shared a look, the weight of their mission pressing down on them. They stepped forward into the grove, and as they crossed the threshold, the world around them shifted. The colors intensified, vibrant greens and golds dancing in the light, and the air felt electric with possibility. In the center of the grove stood a massive tree, its trunk thick and gnarled, adorned with luminescent flowers that glowed softly in the dim light. It radiated an ancient wisdom, and Mira felt a magnetic pull toward it. As they approached, the whispers of the forest intensified, swirling around them in a chaotic melody. Mira's heart raced, and she felt a sudden rush of fear, her thoughts turning inward. What if she was not strong enough? What if she failed to protect her home and those she loved? The air around her began to shimmer, and the shadows coalesced into forms, taking on the shape of her deepest fears. She saw the faces of her friends and family, their expressions twisted in sorrow and despair. You will fail, they whispered in unison, their voices hauntingly familiar. You will lose everything. Mira gasped, the overwhelming weight of their fears threatening to pull her under. But just as panic threatened to consume her, she heard Kieran's voice cut through the darkness. Mira, you are stronger than this. Remember who you are. His words ignited a spark within her, a flicker of defiance. No, she shouted, standing her ground. I will not let fear control me. I fight for my village, for my family, and I will not back down. The shadows recoiled, their whispers faltering as light began to emanate from her, a warm glow that dispelled the darkness. Mira felt a surge of power coursing through her veins, fueled by the love and determination she had for her home. She took a step forward, facing her fears head-on, embracing them as part of herself rather than something to be shunned. As she did, the forms began to shift, and the shadows transformed into flickering images of her friends, their faces filled with encouragement and support. You are not alone, they whispered, their voices now harmonizing with the song of the grove. Kieran stepped beside her, his own fears manifesting as shadows around him. I will face them too, he declared, echoing Mira's resolve. Together, we can conquer anything. The shadows pulsed with energy, swirling around them as they united their strength. With each heartbeat, the grove responded, the flowers glowing brighter, the ancient trees standing tall and proud as if acknowledging their bravery. Your courage has awakened us, a deep voice resonated from the heart of the grove, the tree's bark shifting to reveal glowing runes. We are the spirits of the forest, the guardians of balance. You have proven your worthiness. We will guide you against Thalgarath." Mira and Kieran exchanged awe-filled glances, the weight of their fears lifting as hope surged within them. They had taken the first step toward their destiny, and together they would confront the darkness that threatened their home. As the spirits began to reveal their wisdom, Mira felt a renewed sense of purpose ignite within her. The whispers of the forest transformed from ominous warnings to a symphony of encouragement, guiding her and Kieran toward the path they were meant to walk. Chapter 7: The Gathering Storm. The sacred grove pulsed with life as Mira and Kieran absorbed the wisdom imparted by the ancient spirits. The air shimmered with energy, and the luminous flowers around them glowed brighter, resonating with the newfound hope that surged within their hearts. The spirits, ethereal beings of light and nature, shared stories of old, tales of unity and courage that transcended time. As they listened, Mira felt a connection to the forest deepening, a bond that transcended her fears and doubts. "The balance must be restored," one spirit intoned, its voice echoing like the rustle of leaves. "Thalgarath is awakening, drawn by the darkness in humanity's hearts. You must face him, not just with strength, but with the light of your spirit." Kieran nodded, determination etched on his face. "We understand. We'll gather the villagers and prepare them. We can't let Thalgarath take root in their hearts. We need to show them that fear can be overcome." The spirits swirled around them, a whirlwind of colors and lights. "You are not alone in this fight. The forest will aid you, but you must also unite the hearts of your people. Only together can you stand against the darkness." With newfound clarity, Mira and Kieran left the grove, their spirits buoyed by the support of the ancient guardians. As they retraced their steps through the forest, the path felt different, brighter and more alive. The once ominous whispers transformed into a gentle melody, guiding them back to Eldenwood. Upon returning, they found the village bustling with activity. Despite the prevailing fear, the villagers were preparing for the worst, gathering supplies and reinforcing their homes. Yet, Mira sensed an underlying tension in the air, a hesitance that echoed their own fears. "Mira, Kieran!" called out Alara, a friend and skilled archer, rushing toward them. "We were worried about you. What did you find?" "Hope," Mira replied, her voice steady despite the weight of her emotions. "The spirits of the forest have given us guidance. Thalgarath is awakening, but we can stand against him if we unite." Alara's eyes widened with determination. "Then let's gather everyone. They need to hear this." As word spread through the village, the people began to gather in the central square, their expressions a mix of fear and curiosity. Mira stood before them, Kieran at her side, feeling the weight of their trust pressing down on her shoulders. This was a moment that could change everything. "Thank you all for coming," Mira began, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "We've faced darkness before, and we can do it again. Thalgarath, the ancient monster, is stirring, but we are not helpless. We have the strength of the forest and the wisdom of the spirits on our side." A murmur rippled through the crowd, and Mira could see the fear in their eyes, a fear she recognized all too well. "We must confront our fears together. Each of us carries a light within us, and only by uniting our hearts can we hope to drive back the darkness." Kieran stepped forward, his voice firm. "The spirits have told us that Thalgarath feeds on our fears. We must prepare ourselves, not just physically, but mentally. We need to remind each other of our strength, our unity. We can fight this." Alara raised her bow, the sunlight catching the gleam of her arrows. "I'll help train the others. We need to be ready to defend our homes and each other." As the crowd began to rally, Mira felt a surge of hope. Together, they began forming small groups, each person taking on a role. Some gathered weapons, while others prepared food and supplies. Mira and Kieran worked alongside Alara, training their friends in combat techniques and archery, reminding them that fear could be faced with strength. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the village in shadows, a chilling wind swept through Eldenwood. The air grew heavy with foreboding, and the whispers returned, this time louder and more insistent. Mira's heart raced as she felt the shadows encroaching, the promise of darkness lingering just outside their defenses. That night, as the villagers huddled together, Mira couldn't shake the feeling of dread. She sat on the porch of her home, watching the stars twinkle in the night sky, but even their beauty felt overshadowed by the looming threat. Kieran joined her, his expression thoughtful. "Do you think we're doing enough?" he asked quietly, his gaze fixed on the darkness beyond the village. Mira sighed, leaning back in her chair. "I hope so, but I can't shake this feeling that Thalgarath is coming. We need to be ready for anything." Kieran placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We're stronger together. The villagers are more determined than ever. That's something Thalgarath can't take from us." As night deepened, the atmosphere shifted. The wind howled through the trees, and the whispers morphed into a cacophony of eerie sounds. The villagers gathered around the central fire, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames. Mira stood before them, her heart pounding as she prepared to speak again. "We cannot let fear divide us," she declared, her voice echoing in the night. "We are bound by our love for this village and for one another. We will face Thalgarath together." The villagers cheered, their spirits lifting, yet Mira could sense an underlying tension. The shadows danced around them, growing more pronounced as the night deepened. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. In the early hours of the morning, a piercing cry shattered the tranquility, sending a chill down Mira's spine. "What was that?" she exclaimed, rushing toward the sound. The villagers scrambled, confusion and fear etched on their faces. Kieran grabbed her hand. "Stay close." They raced toward the edge of the village, where the trees loomed ominously, casting long shadows that danced in the moonlight. As they approached, Mira saw a figure stumbling through the underbrush, a villager named Thorn, his face pale and eyes wide with terror. "Thorn, what happened?" Mira shouted, concern flooding her voice. It's Thalgarath," Thorn gasped, breathless. "I saw it! The shadows are alive. They're coming for us." Panic rippled through the crowd as the villagers exchanged fearful glances. Mira felt her heart pound in her chest, the weight of reality crashing down upon her. Thalgarath was not just a legend. He was real, and he was coming. "Everyone, listen," Mira called, raising her voice above the chaos. "We must stand together, prepare for battle. The spirits have guided us, and we cannot let fear take hold." As the villagers rallied, the shadows around them thickened, swirling like a storm brewing in the darkness. Mira felt a surge of determination coursing through her veins. They had faced fear before, and together they would face it again. The storm was gathering, but they would not falter. With the villagers at her side, Mira knew that the battle against Thalgarath was just beginning. They would stand united, fighting not just against the monster outside, but against the fears that threatened to tear them apart from within. The dawn of their confrontation was at hand, and she was ready to face whatever darkness awaited them. Chapter 8: The Darkest Hour. The night air grew heavy with tension as Mira and the villagers stood in the clearing at the edge of Eldenwood, preparing for the impending confrontation with Thalgarath. The flickering torches cast eerie shadows that danced around them, and the whispers of the forest echoed ominously in their ears. It felt as though the very trees were holding their breath, waiting for the darkness to descend. Mira's heart raced as she glanced at the gathered villagers. Fear and determination were etched on their faces, each person grappling with their own anxieties. Kieran stood beside her, his grip firm on his sword, a pillar of strength amid the uncertainty. She could see the flicker of resolve in his eyes, and it steadied her own resolve. Together, they had faced fears before, and now they would face their greatest challenge yet. "Remember what the spirits told us," Kieran said, his voice steady despite the chaos swirling around them. "We must hold fast to each other. We're stronger united." Mira nodded, her breath steadying. "We'll remind everyone of that. We need to face Thalgarath not just with weapons, but with our spirits. If we let fear take hold, it will weaken us." The villagers gathered closer, forming a circle around Mira and Kieran. The fire in the center crackled, illuminating their faces and casting long shadows that seemed to writhe in anticipation. Alara, with her bow strung tightly and arrows poised, stepped forward. "We need to strategize. If Thalgarath appears, we can't let him break our formation." Mira's mind raced, recalling the tales the spirits had shared. "We should use the grove's wisdom. The spirits can guide our actions. We must stay near the heart of the village where the forest's magic is strongest." As they discussed their plan, a chill swept through the clearing, causing a shiver to run down Mira's spine. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves and carrying an ominous sound that resonated like a distant growl. The villagers exchanged worried glances, the sense of impending doom palpable in the air. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath their feet, and a deep rumble echoed through the forest. Mira felt her heart lurch as the shadows around them thickened, swirling like a storm brewing in the darkness. It was as if the very essence of the forest was shifting, preparing for the arrival of something sinister. "Everyone, hold your positions," Kieran shouted, drawing his sword. The villagers tightened their grip on their weapons, a wave of determination washing over them. Mira could see the flickering firelight reflecting in their eyes, a reminder of the strength they held within. Then, with a deafening roar, Thalgaroth emerged from the depths of the forest, a colossal figure cloaked in shadows. His form was both terrifying and majestic, muscles rippling beneath dark scales, eyes glowing like embers in the night. The ground shook with each step he took, and the air crackled with an energy that felt alive, charged with malice. Mira's breath caught in her throat as the monster loomed over them, the scent of earth and decay emanating from him. "You dare to challenge me?" Thalgaroth's voice was deep and resonant, reverberating through the clearing like thunder. "You are nothing but insects beneath my foot." The villagers stood their ground, a mix of fear and defiance in their hearts. "We are not afraid," Mira shouted, finding her voice amid the chaos. "We fight for our home, for our people." Thalgaroth's laugh was like the cracking of thunder. "You think your bravery will save you? I will feed on your fears until you are nothing but shadows." The monster surged forward, and the villagers responded instinctively, forming a barrier around Mira and Kieran. Arrows flew through the air, striking Thalgaroth's hide, but barely leaving a mark. He swatted them away like flies, his fury growing with every failed attempt to harm him. "Stay close," Kieran shouted, rallying the villagers. "Aim for his eyes. That's our best chance." Mira's heart pounded as she focused on the creature before her. She remembered the spirit's words. She needed to embrace her courage and draw upon the light within her. As she gripped her dagger tightly, she closed her eyes, centering herself. The whispers of the forest echoed in her mind, reminding her that she was not alone in this fight. With renewed determination, she opened her eyes and looked at Kieran. "We need to draw him toward the grove. It's our only chance." "Agreed," Kieran replied, his eyes sharp with focus. "On my signal." As Thalgaroth charged, they moved as one, retreating strategically toward the sacred grove. The villagers held their ground, firing arrows and launching stones to distract the beast, keeping his attention focused on them. The trees around them seemed to tremble, the very forest responding to the threat that loomed over them. Mira and Kieran reached the edge of the grove, where the ancient tree stood tall, its branches stretching toward the sky. "Now!" Kieran shouted, and together they sprinted into the clearing, positioning themselves in front of the massive tree. The spirit's magic surged through the air, wrapping around them like a protective shield. Thalgaroth followed, his massive form crashing into the grove, but as he stepped into the heart of the sacred place, the energy shifted. The flowers glowed brighter, and the ground beneath them pulsed with power. The whispers intensified, rising into a crescendo, filling the air with a sense of urgency. "You think to trap me here?" Thalgaroth sneered, his voice echoing with disdain. "This place will be your tomb." Mira and Kieran stood firm, feeling the spirit's energy flow around them, amplifying their strength. "We are not afraid," Mira shouted, her voice ringing with conviction. "We will fight for our home." The spirits emerged, shimmering figures of light swirling around them, guiding their actions and amplifying their resolve. The forest itself seemed to awaken, roots and vines reaching up to entangle Thalgaroth, holding him in place as he roared in fury. "Release me!" the monster bellowed, thrashing against the restraints of nature. But the more he struggled, the tighter the roots wrapped around him, drawing upon the energy of the grove. Kieran raised his sword, rallying the villagers behind him. "Now is our chance! Strike!" With a united cry, the villagers surged forward, arrows flying and weapons raised. Mira felt a surge of power within her, the connection to the spirits giving her strength. She moved alongside Kieran, her dagger glinting in the soft light as she aimed for the monster's eyes. But Thalgarath, driven by rage, unleashed a wave of dark energy, sending shockwaves through the grove. The villagers stumbled, fear creeping back into their hearts as the shadows swirled around them, threatening to consume their courage. Mira's breath caught in her throat as she felt the darkness closing in. The whispers of the forest became frantic, urging her to embrace the light within. In that moment, she closed her eyes and reached deep inside herself, summoning every ounce of courage she had. "Together," she shouted, her voice breaking through the shadows. "Together, we can overcome." With renewed determination, the villagers rallied behind her, their spirits intertwining like threads of light. They formed a circle around Thalgarath, their collective courage igniting a beacon that pushed back against the darkness. As the light swelled, Mira opened her eyes and a surge of energy coursed through her. "This ends now," she cried, thrusting her dagger forward, channeling the spirit's power into the strike. The blade found its mark, piercing through the darkness and into the heart of Thalgarath. The monster let out a deafening roar, the sound reverberating through the grove as the shadows writhed and twisted. But instead of succumbing, the darkness began to dissipate, pushed back by the light of their unity. In that moment, Mira realized that their greatest strength lay not in their weapons, but in their hearts, intertwined by courage and hope. Together, they would confront the darkness, and together they would prevail. As the light engulfed them, a brilliant flash illuminated the grove, and the whispers of the forest rose into a triumphant song, carrying the promise of victory. The shadows receded, and with one final roar, Thalgarath was consumed by the light, banished back to the depths of the darkness from which he had come. In the aftermath, the villagers stood in awe, their hearts pounding with a mixture of relief and disbelief. The grove pulsed with life, the spirits swirling around them in joyous celebration. Mira and Kieran exchanged triumphant smiles, knowing they had faced the darkness together and emerged victorious. Yet even in the light of their victory, Mira knew that this was just the beginning. They had fought back Thalgarath for now, but the darkness would always seek to return. Together, they would remain vigilant, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Chapter 9: Aftermath and Awakening. The dawn broke slowly over Eldenwood, the first light of morning casting a soft glow over the grove. The once familiar sounds of the forest were now mingled with an unfamiliar silence, as if the very trees were holding their breath, waiting for the truth to settle in. Mira stood at the edge of the clearing, her heart heavy yet hopeful, as she reflected on the battle they had just fought. The weight of what had transpired loomed over her like a shadow, yet the vibrant colors of the dawn filled her with a sense of renewal. Kieran joined her, his expression a mixture of relief and exhaustion. "We did it, Mira. We actually did it," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The remnants of their fierce battle were still etched in his features, but there was a light in his eyes that hadn't been there before, a light that spoke of resilience and determination. "Yeah, we did," Mira replied, her gaze still fixed on the grove where the final confrontation had taken place. The ground was now littered with the remnants of their struggle: broken arrows, fallen leaves, and scorched earth. It was a testament to their fight, a reminder of the darkness they had faced and the courage they had summoned to overcome it. But as she looked closer, she noticed something else. The flowers around them were beginning to bloom again, their vibrant colors returning as if the spirits of the grove were celebrating their victory. The air shimmered with energy, and Mira could almost hear the whispers of the forest, soft, melodic, and filled with gratitude. "Do you think it's truly over?" Kieran asked, his brow furrowing slightly. Thalgarath was powerful, and darkness always finds a way to return. Mira turned to him, feeling a surge of determination. "We've faced the darkness before. We will face it again, but now we know what we're fighting for. We've proven that we can unite against it, and as long as we stand together, we can overcome anything." Kieran nodded, a hint of a smile breaking through his weariness. "You're right. We're stronger together." As the sun rose higher, the villagers began to emerge from their homes, their faces filled with a mix of trepidation and awe. They had witnessed the battle from afar, and now they stood together, united by the experience. Mira stepped forward, feeling the weight of their eyes upon her, and took a deep breath to calm her racing heart. Everyone, she began, her voice steady. What we faced last night was terrifying, but we stood together and fought back. Thalgaroth's darkness is banished for now, but we must remember that it could return. We need to remain vigilant and protect our home and each other. A murmur of agreement spread through the crowd, and Mira could see the resolve beginning to take shape in their expressions. The villagers were not the same people they had been before the battle. They had faced their fears and come out stronger. Alara stepped forward, her bow slung over her shoulder. We've proven that we can stand against the darkness. Let's celebrate our victory, but also prepare for what lies ahead. We should train together and reinforce our defenses. If Thalgaroth has taught us anything, it's that we can't let our guard down. As the villagers rallied around her, Mira felt a surge of hope. They began to discuss plans for fortifying the village, organizing training sessions, and sharing stories of bravery from the night before. The atmosphere shifted, the weight of fear slowly replaced by a sense of purpose. As days turned into weeks, Eldenwood transformed. The villagers worked tirelessly to rebuild and strengthen their homes, but there was something more profound happening as well. A newfound sense of community blossomed as neighbors leaned on each other for support and encouragement. The bonds forged in battle had created a tapestry of resilience that united them all. Mira found herself taking on a leadership role, guiding the villagers in their efforts to prepare for future challenges. Kieran remained by her side, his unwavering support a constant source of strength. Together, they trained the villagers in combat techniques and survival skills, instilling a sense of confidence in everyone. One afternoon, as Mira stood in the center of the village, she watched the villagers practicing their archery. Alara was demonstrating techniques, her voice filled with enthusiasm as she encouraged the younger villagers to embrace their skills. Mira felt a swell of pride watching them, knowing that they were becoming stronger together. Yet, even amid this newfound strength, there was an underlying current of anxiety. The whispers of the forest still echoed in Mira's mind, reminding her that darkness was always lurking just beyond their defenses. She often found herself drawn to the grove, seeking the guidance of the spirits that had once helped them. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Mira made her way to the sacred grove. The air felt charged with energy, and the flowers glowed softly in the twilight. As she entered the clearing, she felt a familiar presence wash over her, an invitation from the spirits. "Great spirits of the grove," Mira called out, her voice echoing in the silence. "We have faced darkness and emerged victorious, but I seek your wisdom. How do we prepare for what may come next?" As if in response, the air shimmered and the spirits began to materialize, ethereal figures of light swirling around her. "Mira, you have shown great courage," one spirit intoned, its voice resonating like a gentle breeze. "But remember, darkness thrives on fear. You must continue to foster hope and unity among your people." Mira nodded, absorbing their words. "We are working to strengthen our bonds, but I fear that fear itself may return. How do we ensure that we remain strong?" "The heart of a community is its spirit," the spirit replied. "Continue to nurture that spirit. Share stories of bravery, remind them of their strength, and celebrate the victories, no matter how small. The light within each of you can shine brightly against the darkness." With that, the spirits began to fade, but their words lingered in Mira's mind like a warm embrace. She felt a renewed sense of purpose as she left the grove, understanding that her role as a leader was to inspire hope and unity among her people. As the days passed, the villagers began to share their stories of courage and resilience more openly. They gathered around fires at night, recounting tales of bravery from the battle against Thalgaroth and the moments that had defined them as a community. Laughter echoed through the village, mingling with the crackling of flames, and Mira could see the fear slowly melting away. One evening, Mira stood with Kieran at the edge of the village, watching the sunset paint the sky in vibrant hues of orange and pink. "It feels different now," she said, a smile spreading across her face. "I can see the strength in our people. We're not just survivors, we're a community." Kieran nodded, a sense of pride swelling within him. "You've done an incredible job, Mira. You've given them hope. They believe in themselves, and that's the greatest gift you can give." As they stood together, the warmth of the setting sun enveloped them, and Mira felt a sense of peace settle in her heart. The darkness may always be lurking, but they had proven that they could face it together. They were not alone in this fight, and as long as they held on to their unity, they could confront whatever challenges lay ahead. But deep down, Mira knew that the true test of their resolve was yet to come. Thalgaroth may have been banished, but the whispers of darkness would never be silenced completely. It was up to them to remain vigilant, to nurture their bonds, and to ensure that the light within them never dimmed. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Mira turned to Kieran, determination shining in her eyes. "We'll be ready for whatever comes next. Together, we will face the darkness and we will not falter." And in that moment, with the warmth of hope surrounding them, they knew that the journey was far from over. But they were ready, ready to fight, ready to protect, and ready to embrace the light. Chapter 10: The Dawn of a New Era. The sun rose over Eldenwood, casting a golden glow that bathed the village in warmth and light. It was a new day, a new beginning, and the air hummed with a palpable sense of hope. Mira stood on the balcony of her home, gazing out at the vibrant landscape, her heart swelling with gratitude and determination. The village had transformed over the past weeks, blooming with life and resilience, and the echoes of laughter and camaraderie filled the air. Mira took a deep breath, inhaling the sweet scent of blooming flowers and freshly cut grass. It was hard to believe that only a few weeks ago they had been plunged into darkness, facing the terrifying threat of Thalgaroth. Now the community stood stronger than ever, united in purpose and spirit. The villagers were busy preparing for a celebration, one to honor their victory and to reaffirm their commitment to protect Eldenwood against any future threats. Mira could see them bustling about, decorating the village square with colorful banners and flowers, laughter ringing through the air as children chased one another, their joy infectious. Kieran approached her, his presence grounding as always. "Are you ready for today?" he asked, a hint of mischief in his eyes. "I hear Alara has some surprises planned." Mira chuckled, shaking her head. "I can only imagine what she has in store for us. But I am ready, more than ever. We need this celebration, not just to honor our victory, but to remind ourselves of the strength we've found in each other." Kieran nodded, his expression serious for a moment. "It's important to remember where we came from and to acknowledge the sacrifices made, but we also need to look ahead. We can't let our guard down." Mira placed a reassuring hand on his arm. "We won't. We've learned the importance of unity and vigilance, but today is about hope. Today we celebrate life." As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the village square began to fill with villagers. The air buzzed with excitement, and the scent of delicious food wafted through the air, mingling with the sweet fragrance of flowers. Laughter and music filled the atmosphere, creating a vibrant tapestry of joy and camaraderie. Mira took her place at the center of the square, where a makeshift stage had been set up. She felt a surge of energy as she looked out over the gathered crowd, each face reflecting a mix of pride and determination. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice ringing out above the joyful noise. "Today we gather not only to celebrate our victory, but to honor the bonds we've forged. We faced darkness together, and we emerged stronger." The crowd erupted in applause, the sound echoing through the square. Mira's heart swelled with pride as she continued. "We have shown that when we stand united, we can overcome any challenge. Let us remember that our strength lies not just in our weapons, but in our hearts, in the connections we share." Kieran stood beside her, his presence reassuring. "Let today be a reminder of our resilience. Thalgaroth may have been vanquished, but the darkness will always seek to return. We must remain vigilant and support one another, for together we are an unstoppable force." As the villagers cheered, Alara stepped forward, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "And now, let the festivities begin," she exclaimed, and the crowd erupted into laughter and applause. Music filled the air as musicians began to play, and the villagers started dancing, their joy infectious. Mira watched as people joined hands, twirling and laughing, the energy of the celebration radiating through the square. Children ran about, their faces painted with bright colors, while others engaged in games and competitions, all united in the spirit of celebration. Amidst the festivities, Mira spotted a small group of children gathered around a storyteller, their eyes wide with wonder as he spun tales of heroes and adventures. She moved closer, intrigued by the stories that wove together their history and the legends of Eldenwood. Once, long ago, the storyteller began, his voice rich and captivating. There was a great hero who fought against darkness and won. But what made this hero truly remarkable was not just their strength, but the love and unity of the people who stood beside them. Together, they banished the shadows and ushered in a new era of peace. Mira's heart swelled as she listened, realizing that this was the legacy they were building, a legacy of hope, bravery, and unity. She joined the children, her spirit uplifted by the power of storytelling, and felt the warmth of their laughter as they shared in the wonder of the tales. As the day wore on, Mira participated in games and activities, allowing herself to revel in the joy of the moment. She shared stories with her fellow villagers, recounting the bravery displayed during their battle against Thalgarath, inspiring a sense of pride and courage in everyone present. But as the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the village, Mira felt a shift in the atmosphere. The laughter and music continued, but a sense of foreboding crept into her thoughts. She had always known that darkness was a constant threat, but she also understood that they had the power to face it together. Later that evening, as the stars twinkled overhead, Mira gathered with Kieran and the villagers around a large bonfire. The warmth of the flames enveloped them, and they shared stories of their hopes for the future, dreams that would guide them forward. "Mira," Kieran said, breaking the comfortable silence, "what do you see for Eldenwood in the future?" Mira gazed into the flames, contemplating his question. "I see a community that continues to grow stronger, one that remains vigilant and united against any threat. We will protect our home, but we will also strive to learn from the past. We can't let fear dictate our lives." Kieran nodded, his expression thoughtful. "And we must nurture the bonds we've created. These connections are what make us resilient. We can't afford to forget the lessons we've learned." Mira looked around at the gathered villagers, their faces illuminated by the firelight, reflecting hope and determination. "We've faced darkness and emerged victorious, but it's essential that we continue to share our stories and support one another. That's how we'll build a future free from fear." As the fire crackled and the stars shone brightly above, the villagers joined together in a circle, their hands linked, their hearts beating as one. They shared their dreams, their aspirations, and their commitments to each other, each voice weaving into a beautiful tapestry of unity and hope. "Together," Mira said, her voice ringing clear and strong, "we will face whatever challenges lie ahead. We are the guardians of Eldenwood, and we will protect our home and our loved ones." With that declaration, the villagers raised their voices in unison, a powerful chorus echoing into the night, solidifying their bond. The fire flickered, illuminating their faces as they celebrated not just their victory over darkness, but the dawn of a new era, a time filled with promise, courage, and unwavering unity. As the festivities continued late into the night, Mira felt a profound sense of peace wash over her. They had faced their fears, fought against the darkness, and emerged stronger together. And now, as guardians of their future, they stood ready to embrace whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that their strength would always be found in their unity. In that moment, beneath the twinkling stars and the warmth of the fire, Mira knew that the story of Eldenwood was far from over. It was a tale of resilience, love, and hope, a story that would continue to unfold as long as they stood together, ready to face the unknown.